Honestly, I think it's a travesty that there aren't more videos being made about David Hollander. Like, yes, we get a ton of Shane and Ilya's videos. They are our main leads. We have videos about the girls, Rose and Svetlana, and Elena and Maria. Yuna gets her day in the sun, as do Scott and Kip. But David tends to fall by the wayside, which isn't fair because he serves five major functions within the story. He's a contrast for fathers who project their inadequacies on their sons. He gets to show us a different way to play within a very toxic sport. He's the father that Ilya needs. He gets to give Shane and Ilya the template of what a relationship between equals actually looks like. Extra important for Ilya, by the way, but I'll come back to that in a bit. And finally, he challenges the toxic masculinity stereotype about being a major caretaker within his family. Honestly, I think David Hollander deserves some love, and this video aims to give him that and more. Of course, before I talk about the many reasons why we all love David Hollander, I'd like to say a big thank you to my lovely patrons and YouTube members whose support have been instrumental in helping me continue to make content, especially since I started doing this full time at the start of last year, which was the last time I was in paid employment. And a special shout out to Lena, Sherry, Kat, and Holly for their extra support. You get all the hearts and kisses to. Mwah. If you too would like to support me on Patreon or become a YouTube member to enjoy certain perks, maybe even get a shout out, the link to do so is in the description box. And with that said, back to David Hollander. I always find it very interesting that our first introduction to David wasn't back at the Prospect Cup. Clearly, Yuna is the one who is the most invested in Shane's career, what with her being his manager when he was just starting off. And even though David could have been sitting with Shane in the stands at the start of the show, I thought it a deliberate choice to have Yuna be the one present in that scene whilst David is most likely at home. I say a deliberate choice because based off of what we learn at the cottage when Shane is talking with Ilya and mentions the fact that David had played hockey back in college when he was at McGill, we get to immediately realize that David Hollander is not quite like other hockey players. Here is a character who has learned to still love the sport, but not make it the entirety of his personhood. He isn't devoted to it quite like Yuna and Shane are, and in this way, it sets him apart from the rest of his family until, of course, Ilya joins them, at which point we are able to see how the story itself splits the family in two in some ways, with Shane and Yuna's obsessiveness on one hand, and David and Ilya being more chill on the other. And before anyone tries to quickly type a comment about how, well, what do you mean? Ilya is also obsessed with hockey. The reason why he's so good at it is because he's obsessed. I would like to posit that that isn't really the case. Like, we get to see in season one that whereas Shane spends every waking moment he possibly can studying the sport, its histories, he's either working out or reading some hockey book. You have Ilya, by contrast, who seems to be having a swell time. He's social, he's having a blast, he's partying. We only see him laser focused on hockey when it's time for practice or training or for the game itself or during the season. Outside of that, he pulls off maintaining a pretty decent work life balance as far as the sport is concerned. This to me is quite aligned with what we get to see of David Hollander. Like, sure, we don't get introduced to him whilst he was at McGill, and so we have no idea what kind of player David was, but we can deduce from how chill and laid back David himself is that he represents a different type of hockey player. The one who doesn't let the sport utterly consume who they are, who gets to maintain some balance. And it is necessary because, and this is a mild spoiler from the second Holland book, but even Ilya admits it that he isn't as obsessed with hockey quite like Shane is. Ilya doesn't love the sport to the point of obsession like the man he loves does, and that is okay. There are different ways to be a hockey player, and David Hollander shows quite clearly one of those ways, which is you can be pretty chill about it. Something that I know Ryan Price would absolutely appreciate. And I think it's important to highlight how different a player David is because it bleeds into the second reason why he's a very important character within the narrative, especially in his role as a foil. I am, of course, referring to the fact that David serves as a great contrast to the fathers in the story who project their inadequacies onto their sons, particularly in the case of Grigory Rozanov and Curtis Barrett. With Grigory, it's immediately clear just to the audience just how exacting a father he is on Ilya in all their conversations, all the conversations he has with his son. He never has a kind word to say. He's either publicly humiliating him in front of the Boston Raiders GM by implying to the man that Ilya has no work ethic and tends to be lazy, something that the GM immediately refutes since he knows that the type of talent that Ilya has displayed at his age. Both Ilya and Shane were drafted at 18, remember, and we get to see a clear difference in the support from their fathers that both Shane and Ilya got in that very same scene. Gregory had to put his stamp, was driven by this desire to be perceived as stern in the face of the Raiders GM, and in order to boost his own ego and image as the father of Ilya Rozanov, he went the route of putting Ilya down before the GM. Contrast that with David in that very same scene. He doesn't attempt to draw Shane into the conversation with the Metro's GM. That was Yuna, actually. David instead was just there as a silent support for his son, his presence calming as always, which, considering the nerves, the fact that Shane is really for being chosen second as opposed to being the first draft pick like he had hoped. But that honor went to Ilya instead. Shane needed all the calm and comfort he could get in that moment, and David gave it to him. David did not turn what should have been one of the first highlights of Shane's career into being about himself. He's aware that it's not needed or proper, and the moment should be Shane's. Contrast that to Gregory's abysmal behavior. And the same can be said for how we always cut to Gregory, calling Ilya to berate him about lost matches, highlighting what he believes is wrong with Ilya's play and why said decision resulted in the loss. Even being dismissive when Ilya points out, for example, the lack of cohesion in the Russian team during the Sochi Olympics. Is dismissive of it, even when Svetlana's father, who is a former goalie and is now a minister, agrees with Ilya's point. Gregory couches his criticisms underneath the banner of tough love and him wanting to make Ilya a better player, but it's more of a case of those who can't do teach, and those who know they have zero capabilities in that regard teach very horribly. Hell, I would read some of Gregory's reactions as him resenting Ilya for his gifts and abilities. He believes that if he had his son's talent, he will be able to do better, hence why he keeps coming up with all the unnecessary and unasked for commentary on Ilya's play. The same can be said to apply to Curtis Barrett, who is Troy's father in the novel Role Model. Now, quick spoiler warning for those who haven't read that particular book, but Curtis, we discover, is someone who played in his earlier years, didn't quite cut it to go pro, and so has spent all this time not only feeding his son with the misogynistic, racist, homophobic culture that is prevalent within the sport, but also still coasted off of Troy's success as an athlete, even whilst denigrating him for finally choosing to be a better person. Now, I'm not going to go into further details as I don't want to completely spoil Role Model for those who haven't read it yet, and we know that Jacob will cover part of the book in season 2. But like I said earlier, we see David's role within the story as one where he's a great foil for fathers who are resentful of their son's success as athletes and so who take up the micromanaging role and denigrate their children every chance that they get in order to exercise power over them whilst feeling good about themselves in the process. David's way of engaging in conversation with Shane about topics that aren't only related to hockey, for example, such as the meeting with his parents whereby Yuna insists that Shane only watch YouTube videos about the sport whilst David is interested in the unlikely animals wormhole that Shane went exploring. It gives room for that. Or the fact that David is more aware of Shane's discomfort about sitting in the Wimbledon box seats, even as he expresses concern for his son. Like, we know that Kip's father is hands down one of the best fathers we got to see in the show, period. But god damn it, David ties with him in that regard, especially when we remember that this man, this gentle bear of a man, is an ex hockey player. I'm not trying to generalize here, but that David Hollander retained his kindness and goodness and is able to share it with his two sons, Shane and Ilya both, matters incredibly much to me, especially because of his role as being the father that Ilya needs. And I know before anyone mentions it in the comments, we haven't really gotten the chance to see David and Ilya bond just yet in the first season. It's going to be more of a focus for season two. But even if you haven't read the books, it's not too far fetched for anyone to be able to infer that David Hollander is a fucking saint compared to Gregory piece of shit Rozanov, and that Ilya is finally going to get the opportunity to bond with and be cared for by a father figure who doesn't judge him as weak for the littlest things. And when he allows himself to be vulnerable, who isn't going to judge or berate him for said vulnerability either. I mentioned it in my What You Missed About Shane coming out to his parents video, but I do consider it a nice touch that a bit of foreshadowing that when Ilya arrives at the Hollander's residence and David offers him a drink, the drink he gives him is Russian vodka. It's not like David planned it or anything. They were not expecting to have Ilya Rozanov in their home. Unwittingly, he had already created a space of comfort and familiarity for Ilya where he gets to have a piece of home with him without even needing to ask for it. That is such a great way that this gets hinted to Ilya and also to us as the audience. That combined with the fact that after David walks in on Shane and Ilya kissing, he doesn't violate their privacy by immediately telling Yuna what he had seen. He kept it to himself and even apologized for barging in when Shane showed up to tell his parents the truth. There was no anger, no reproachment, just love and concern and apology. Something that in that moment, I can bet you that Ilya was thinking, this can never be Grigory Rozanov. And he would be right in that regard. I also see David's importance in showing Shane and Ilya the template of what a relationship between equals looks like. I mean, Shane already knows that because he was raised by David and Yuna both, and it is clear that they both tend to manage a balancing act between being present for Shane as a young athlete whilst caring for their home as well. But this would be Ilya's first introduction to that. I need that to sink in for us for a moment that the only depiction of a marriage that Ilya Rozanov got to witness was the one between his father and his mother, a marriage where Irina was clearly unhappy and depressed and ended up taking her life. And Grigory's response to that was to deny her depression, deny what she had suffered, and instead he spun the tale of her accidentally taking pills and forbade his son from ever saying the truth. And from that time onwards, moments of vulnerability for Ilya were mostly met with comparison to his mother and Irina being blamed for Ilya's perceived softness. I mean, why else would Ilya's response to him breaking down in tears when is in the Tampa hotel room with Shane, be one where he's apologizing for crying, for letting his emotions show? It's because he grew up in a home where that wasn't allowed, where his mother was most likely not even allowed to process her own emotions properly. That is the foundation of marriage and partnership that Ilya was raised on. And so we have David, who is the very antithesis of Grigory Rozanov, who gets to show Ilya what a true partnership should look like when the two parties love and respect and honor each other. I personally find that incredible and just absolutely needed. And finally, David helps to challenge toxic masculinity stereotypes by not neglecting the caretaker role to Yuna within their family. I know in the show, when he shows up at the cottage, he's there to get a charger for his phone, but in the books, he's present in order to get the laundry pods because it was his turn to do the laundry. I mean, can you imagine Gregory Rosanov doing laundry? Hell, can you imagine Curtis Barrett? I know I can't. And then there's him making dinner for the family when the Admirals win the Eastern Conference Finals, which is their ticket to the Stanley Cup Finals. Shane and Yuna were watching the game, and David, who I repeat, is the one who played hockey in university. He is the one cooking dinner. It's such a nice subversion of what the patriarchy expects the family unit to look like and function as, and is a great way to highlight how David Hollander's very existence within the story is one that consistently challenges toxic masculinity, whether it's him actively choosing to be a better parent to his son, one who doesn't believe that he needs to put Shane down to feel better about himself, or the way he doesn't shy away from splitting roles and sharing chores in the family, or how he hasn't turned being a hockey bro into his entire personality. I absolutely adore David Hollander. That man deserves all the love and all the flowers. But of course, these are all just my thoughts. I would, as always, love to hear yours. Whether or not you agree with me, please share them in the comments. Like this video, however, if you've watched this far and haven't done so yet, but enjoyed anything of what I had to say, share it so others can find my channel as well. Or you can check out my gaming or ASMR channels if they sound like something you might be interested in. I have them both linked in the description bar. I will see you tomorrow with a new video. Until then, do remember, obsessing over the things you love, perfectly valid coping mechanism.